thank you for joining us for another episode of Let's Grow Some. Today we're discussing the Black Lives Matter movement, a movement that's have greatly impacted our year so far. It's a movement that focuses on civil disobedience and any racially motivated crimes or action towards our Black community.
Thank you, Garden. I want to start by saying that this November 3rd, will be my first time ever voting in an election.
Yay!
Yes, yay for me. The reason why I made that decision is because although I am greatly disturbed by individual acts of racism historically and things that have happened recently that always happen to our race, I realized that I have to advocate and take actions to affect things that will actually impact the future. Things as such as policies, decisions, and practices that my children will be affected by. So for that reason, I decided that I am going to vote. I made the mistake in 2016 not to do so, but 2020 will be a different year for me. So are you guys, any of you planning to vote?
Wow, powerful message, Jeff. I'm not in Canada. I'm not in the States. I'm in Canada, so I'm gonna throw it back to you all.
Oh yes, that is true. And I know Cassie, you're in Haiti, but I'm speaking to you, Guarded and Priska. Are you guys planning to do so?
Yeah, I actually requested the absentee ballot, so of course I will be voting.
Unfortunately for me, I am not able to. What I can do is affect change in my community. Trust me, I've been talking about it, and everyone knows that they need to get ready and get the ballots ready and go to the polls. And I've texted, I've talked about it. So that's the only way I can affect change on my part.
And actually, I was reading something, and that is exactly what it said in that article, that even though you might not, and for you, Woodland, who lives in Canada, and Cassie, you live in Haiti, I'm sure you have friends that live in the US and they have that, they can vote. I have to say, it is a privilege. It is truly a privilege to be able to vote. And it is a civic duty to do so. So what you can do is actually engage those that are able to vote and push them to do so, because there are a lot at stakes this year.
And one thing you have to realize, Giovanni, is that whatever happens in the U.S. affects us here in Haiti. Like,
right.
It affects many other.
It affects the world, because
the
United States is.
And I remember having this discussion with someone, and I was talking, and they were like, it was kind of rude actually. They were like, "Oh, why are you talking about voting in the U.S.? Like, you're not even able to vote." I'm
right.
like, well, I know, but it is affecting my life, because whatever happens, the politics in Haiti depends basically on what's happening in the U.S. So of course, I know I can't vote. I'm not saying that I am going to vote, but I know who I want to win. And if I want that person to win, I have to talk about it and talk about people that I think I can influence and tell them what I think, what can pursue them to go in another direction. Because the Haitian community depends on whoever becomes the next president. Don't forget, we have a lot of immigrants in the U.S.
Right.
And what speaking of how globally this decision affects everyone, we have to keep in mind of also how the BLM affected so many places, and in this year alone, this movement started in the U.S. and basically radiated out
Europe,
so many places in the world.
Yeah.
Right. I have to say,
I was gonna say the message that's being communicated, is that the Black people have been denied their fundamental right to be and in a sense of speaking. And as you guys know, before we weren't allowed to vote, like Black people weren't allowed to vote. So
right.
I think now being able to exercise that right, it's very important. And it's not about whether you like the person or not, but it's more so is whatever they're talking about changing the laws, they talking about like amending, it's making sense for us,
The kind of future
for
that
Black people, for our community. So more so to me, it's not about like the battle between like Republican and Democrat. Is more so who's in favor of our community. And when I say our community, I'm talking about the Black community.
Right. I think there's also a lot more than we can do than just voting,
Mhm.
especially if we're looking at solutions to influence our situation as Black people here in North America. We've all seen and we've all watched the murder of George Floyd's on our devices after May
Yeah.
25th, right? And
Mhm.
though I have to admit that I never could get myself to fully watch the whole thing, but the clips that I saw angered me. But what inspired me through all this was the response that we've seen around the world, right? We saw millions of people, despite COVID, go out there in March and start speaking up. And that's what stayed with me, is that we need to speak up. So when there's acts of racism against us, we can't stay quiet anymore. We need to start speaking up. Because if we don't speak up, it's going to be hard to accept, but if we don't speak up, we're approving of it. If we don't speak up, we're encouraging it in some sense. So that's the first thing that I've learned from it. The second thing is voting, of course, but when we talk about voting, we need to know, we need to be aware of what's going on in our communities. And it's not just the main elections. We also need to know who's running our cities, who's in charge in our counties, right? So we need to be involved that way. We can be involved in educating the younger ones, right? So there are and then I'm not gonna say to go out and it's not our role to go and educate other races, right? They should know better. But we can do more in educating our own. We can do more in building generational wealth. We can do more in building strong Black communities, because we don't have a strong Black communities. I've watched the Asians, right? The Jews, they took the time, they built their strong communities. Money is power. And the thing is, with Black people, we don't have that. So they don't need us. We need to start going out there. We need to build our communities. We need to team up. We need to support our small businesses. We need to invest Black. There's so many things that we can do other than voting. But I want to make sure that people are aware of this, right? And they are taking action, right? And not just standing back.
Yeah, and I think also like that's the whole slogan behind the movement, where they saying it's not that they're trying to say like other people life doesn't matter. I think more so they're trying to highlight what's going on within the Black community, what's going on like to African American, and the injustice that they're being put through within this country. So I know a lot of people are negating that fact, and also they're seeing it as something where okay, we're saying that our lives matter more, and it's not about our lives being more valuable. It's more so about like why can't we have equal
Right.
rights? Why can't like and in a sense I see it, if we all free, we all have the same right, the same value, the whole world would be better.
well,
Right.
at this point, Sarah, it's not even about yes, equality is important. At this point, I'm looking for equity. You know, it's been so many years, you know, that yes, we've been free, and yes, on paper we have the same right. But however, everyone is so far ahead. We're playing
Right.
catch up.
We're
So
400 years behind or
playing
more, right?
I'm sorry. Yeah, so we're playing catch up. So when I say equity, I mean it's time to give back to the Black community everything that,
That
if
was taken
not
away.
all, that have been taken away, and a
I
lot
think
has been taken away.
I think I disagree with that. I think I don't want anyone to, I don't think it's about giving back to us. I think it's time for us to take what we deserve. And I agree with you, Woodland. We need to organize ourselves and practice group economics, because you talk about the Asians. When you go, if you go to a Chinese restaurant, what do you see? You rarely see a black person working. You see almost everyone there. They look the same, because they understand that they need to keep their money in their communities. You have Chinatown, and almost in every major cities in the U.S. We don't believe in organizing ourselves, and I think we need to start thinking about doing that. You also brought up a very important point. Money is power, and that's where we need to start. We need to start investing in ourselves. They will never We will never get anything from anyone else, because
Just because
people,
we're will not does not mean it's not deserved.
Well,
I
yeah,
agree with
because I'm
we
a
will
little bit
not,
with you on
but
that.
that does not mean it is not deserved.
I'm
well,
a bit with you on that, guarded when in the sense of, yes, we have some work to do in ourselves, but they have a lot of work to do. They have a lot more work to do. There's systemic racism in the government, right? In our countries, in our institutions altogether, right? And they need to be aware of that, and we need to speak up, and they need to do something about that. So it's up to us, but they have a lot of work to do on their end too, and they need to recognize that.
but how do you make someone recognize something and give up power? People don't just give up power like this. So it is
Right, but
on
what?
us to work on ourselves and do what we need to do. And by that I mean, we need to organize ourselves and make sure that we are in key positions, because I'm sure you guys have seen this, where you go somewhere, it's usually very shocking to see a black person in a powerful position. So I think we just need to make sure that we are in places where we can actually we can make changes. And I do understand, of course we deserve reparation, but I'm thinking I'm not going to focus on that. I want to make sure that I'm doing my part. Of course we do.
I understand what you're saying, Jeffan, but you have to also understand that, like, you know, I'm touching on the key position that you're talking about. It's like me as a Black woman having a PhD in an individual of a different ways. Let's say like a Caucasian person having like a BA and being offered something like way better than I deserve. You understand? So it's not about like, you know, being in key position, but they're keeping you away from being in that key position that you're speaking of. So yes, we can go and take, but like, you know, how do you go about doing that when this country was built to keep you away from like, you know, flourishing
That
as
is
a person?
Right, the most educated group in the States are Black women, right?
That is true.
And
Yeah.
so why aren't we out there? So they
And
need
still
to do something,
disrespected.
right? So they need to do something in their part also. And following the death of George Floyd and the BLM movement in 2020, a lot more companies are talking about that. You know, there's regular meetings to hear our
Thoughts?
our thoughts exactly on these things. So I think it is opening up conversation. Though I agree, we need to build up our communities. We need to do things for ourselves, but they need to work. They need to do the. I'll give you guys an example. I was, and I told you guys that story in private. when I was I was working, of course, and I went to the cafeteria, and my colleagues were there having their lunches, and then a Black woman was expressing how happy she was that she saw a Black president, and she was saying how it'll teach her son that for him there's no limitations. And one of my non-Black colleagues responded that Barack is not Black, and the only reason he got as far as he did, it's because he was raised by white women. That, the dumbest comment I've ever heard, the most shocking to me as well, because that says a lot about how they see us. You know, it forced me to ask myself, is that what they all, is that how they all see us? And is that why we're not able to reach, to go higher than we're supposed to, than we are right now? You know what I mean? We as Black people or skin color or hair walk into the room before we do. There's already pre-made assumptions of who we are based solely on the color of our skin. This is sad. I get very passionate. Sorry, guys.
No.
Thank you for sharing that, because I think it's, no, thank you for sharing that.
I've gotten to the point where I know it's not just about educating myself or educating my community or growing our community. It's not just that, because what we live in the United States, and I mean around the world, we're a small part of that population. The majority of the United States is not Black people. So if we want to affect change, yes, of course we have to affect change within our communities, but they have to do their part as well. And they have to realize that where the problem is this, when you tell somebody about systemic racism, they don't particularly understand. When I talk about that, an example Woodland provided a great example in the workforce. And when you walk in a room, if before you speak, the color of your skin already has an effect on what the person in front of you think of you, then that's a problem.
Yeah, and then
I've faced it, and so many times I've heard the comment, "Oh my gosh, she's so smart for a Black girl. Oh my gosh, she's so pretty for a Black girl." Like, why does for a Black girl need to be at the end of that?
Right, because they're not expected to be, right?
Exactly.
And so when we walk in the room and we know that's what they think, we're always stuck in a place where we're trying to prove ourselves.
Exactly. And
we're trying to work harder. Yeah, go ahead.
You always have to be like, way more.
10 times better.
Exactly. Like, why?
The purpose. Go ahead,
That's
Jeff.
the way that it is. It's the reality for all of us living in America and the rest of the world. I think that's one thing that is ubiquitous for people of color, is that our experience living in this skin, we all experience the same thing. And I see where you guys are coming from, but I just don't see how we can, I don't know how we can change other people's behaviors. And do you feel, okay, I'm going to ask this question. Do you guys feel comfortable enough if you see someone make an uncomfortable comment to tell them, this is how you make me feel? Would you be able to do that?
Of course I will.
Educating them.
Of course.
Right.
And I think that's what the movement is doing. That's what this movement is doing.
Giving us a voice,
making
right?
people talk more. Like, we're more verbal about what's going on. It's more out there, So I think it's very important, and I'm happy, that it was created, because I feel like now it forces you to talk about the elephant that's in the room.
Right. And
not
it's
everyone is happy about the Black Lives Matter, because you can tell from everything that online that some people are feeling really uncomfortable, because now Black people are demanding the respect that they deserve or whatever it is that they need. And you can even, like, being Black, even in a Black community, like in a Black country like Haiti, like the color of your skin, if there's someone that is lighter or someone that is mixed, not even like white, there's a difference between how they see you and that other person, just because of the there's
Right,
skin.
colorism.
Yeah, colorism in Haiti is huge.
Right,
And
right.
is it racism? It's not. It's we. I don't think we see it as racism, but
But it is a
I
form.
think it is a form of
Well,
racism
it comes-
because the
Yeah.
effect of it is kind of the same, because
Right.
some people have some advantages just because of their color, and their socioeconomic status might be the same, but just because they're much lighter than you, when they go somewhere, they might be treated better than you.
Differently.
And that
Exactly.
comes from
Exactly, just based on that. And that
Excited,
is
like in
huge in Haiti, actually. That is really huge in Haiti. I have heard stories, and I will not name places, but the last time I went on vacation there's this very specific place where I have heard that if you are light, you will be treated differently than someone who's darker. And to be honest, you know how in Haiti they talk about diaspora, and if you visit, you're from the US, even if you are, it's almost like it's not even about the money, it's about color.
right, and it comes
Yeah.
from slavery, right?
Colorism.
Exactly.
Yeah, it comes from slavery. So if we go back to slavery, to the slave days, to the lighter people were given more privilege, so it stayed with us in our country,
Yeah.
right? So we not only that white people, well, lighter people, they have more money, they expect more respect from the population, but the population also automatically gives them that respect because they in our heads, we're not as good as them because of this color in your skin, and that comes from slavery. That's what we were taught back in the day.
And talking about key positions, even in Haiti, like whatever like big business that you have or whatever, when you go there, mostly it's going to be someone that is light skinned. It's most positions that are high in pay and stuff are occupied by people that are light skinned. So it's not just, and when to me Black Lives Matter was like a really big thing, and I was always looking at it online. It was because I was like, okay, what we saw online happening in the US happen in Haiti all the time. Like it happens. Like it's like our lives don't matter. Like when you see how people are being treated and stuff like that, and who do we go to?
Yeah.
That's like another question for another day.
Yeah.
But
Because I mean, unlike the U.S. is not like it's being highlighted as much in Haiti.
exactly.
Right.
Even if it is, like it dies after like a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
All are different movements, and that's one thing as well. In Haiti, we always have an angle. People are always trying to profit off of something. So if that's what we do, then we're never going to go anywhere.
And that aligns with what Jafana was saying in terms of building your own community and making the
Yeah.
change within our own communities. And with a country that the entire 98% of the population is Black, if you're still at this point experiencing colorism, that tells us that we need to work harder. We need to work more efficient and educating our people and pushing these changes.
Right.
And you're right, people have angles. Even during the Black Lives Matter movement in the US, you have people profiting from the movement stating different goals that it does not have. Our goals are to stop racially motivated incidents with police brutality. The way the police treat a Black person versus a white person during a simple traffic stop is entirely different. And I can name a specific experience that I've had. I was pulled over for doing something absolutely crazy. And then in my defense, I did it because I wasn't familiar with the area. I was going down a lane to try to get ahead, but it turned out it was a turning lane and I wasn't aware. So at the last minute, I swerved back into the actual lane that I'm supposed to be. And unfortunately, the car behind me was a police officer. So I got pulled over. And I got pulled over, and in my car was myself and my white friend. And we got pulled over. And immediately, before even addressing me, he asked her, even before asking me my license and registration, he spoke to her first. And then when I was asked for my license and registration, and I explained what was going on, and I apologized. I stated that, I wasn't familiar with the area. It, he let me go. Now I've been pulled over several times before, and in each and several incidents, even if I wasn't doing something wrong, what I believe, I got a ticket, and it usually just escalates without it needing to. So there are plenty of incidents that you can go on, and police brutality is just incredible when it comes to when a white person versus a black person. I don't know if you guys have any experience in terms of being pulled over by a police officer and having any difference in.
Yeah, like I've been pulled over, I think like twice since I've been driving, and it's I never have like have gotten a ticket or anything like that. So I haven't experienced. I mean, although I know there are other people out there that's been through it, but personally, I have not.
Um, Implicit bias is a real thing, and I wish more people would admit to it. If you are black, a lot of people will judge you even before you speak. And unfortunately, the police, I have to say, they are guilty of that. And it would be interesting if they would just sometimes admit that their unfairly treatments of some black men, it's because in their head, you see a black man and you see a dangerous criminal. And we have to say, not all our black men are dangerous. Some of them, when you see that, there's one story that is on social media, this young kid, Elijah, you see him and he looks like someone who would not even hurt a fly. And when you hear about they gave him a tranquilizer and he ended up dying, like, how can you see someone like that and think that they're going to harm you?
I think it's more
Only
so.
the fact that you're just biased. You see a black person and automatically all your alerts go up, and you think that they're going to do something.
Yeah.
I have personally, I have not had any bad interactions with the police. Actually, one time I was speeding. I probably should have gotten a ticket. He let me go. I gave him my story. I told him my story, and he took pity on me. So I'm grateful for that. But it is a real thing, and maybe it's
It's
because I'm a woman. I'm not sure, but when it comes to our black men, it's very real. Where the police do treat them differently than if it was a white male. So
well, there's so many. I
But
agree.
No,
It's
just to say
or
like just sorry.
go ahead, Sarah.
No, I was just gonna say just to make it clear, like it's not all the police officers that are like that, and I get if we're looking at it, is more so a stigma, and also it comes from like a generation, so they grew up with that like mindset, so that's something that they're learning from their parent, and their parent learned from their grandparents, so it's more so like I feel it's it's like a cycle.
right.
well, as a police officer, you're supposed
That
to be
was going to
trained
be my
to be,
argument.
to be able to de-escalate situations. You
Right.
cannot walk into a situation and make it worse than it was before just because you're afraid yourself.
But as we all know, they are not well equipped and prepared to do the job. Not all of them are. And
So that's
just
part of the
because,
BLM movement, and we want our
yeah,
police officers to be
exactly.
more trained, and we want a different reaction, and we want psych eval, we want change in the police force.
You couldn't have said it better, girl.
Civilians also take advantage of that, so they know that that as Black people we're treated worse when it comes by the police. So there's many cases where they just call the police and make up stories,
Yeah.
right? To because they know that the police will be harsher on us, right? But it's so,
that story of the woman in the park.
oh,
The
yeah,
one in the park, right, with the dog.
Yeah.
Did
right,
you guys
right,
see that she
Oh,
made a second call?
No, did
right.
she?
I didn't see.
Called a second time and said that he was threatened. The one that was on all media outlet where she was saying that he was threatened. She made a second call saying that he was about to physically assault her or something like that. So this woman knew exactly what she was trying to achieve by calling the police and making a false accusation. So yes, some people do take advantage of that, and they're very
They know what they're doing.
by this.
Right, right.
The BLM movement, you know, it's when we look at the reason why we have that, it's very difficult to accept the realities that we are faced every day, whether it's at work or whether it's, you know, in our daily life, just walking to the supermarket or doing every day of our lives and everything that we do. So this is why, you know, we're calling on our viewers that are watching our episode today to, if you have not registered to vote, please do so. If you are somebody who are vocal, who have a large following, speak to your followers and let them know that voting is important. We have to make changes in our communities. We have to be better. We have to make decisions that will help impact our future and future generations to come. And if you are in a situation where you're facing racism at work, anywhere, speak up. Speak up and, you know, make a change. And if you are also in a situation where people are taking advantage of a Black person, a Black man, speak up.
And a Black woman. There are many cases of
Black
Black women that we're not talking about as well, right? There are many names out there.
And to add to what Garded said, we also mentioned not just voting, to what Woodland was saying earlier. If you are someone who knows about financial things, make sure you organize a group, educate other people. If you can create a group, and we heard about this story about this group of Black people that invested and bought a land. We need to start doing these things. We shouldn't just sending each other memes or jokes on WhatsApp or whatever that we use. We need to start having important conversations that are going to build our communities and empower us.
That's
and
right.
Can you guys do something with me? I just feel like I just need to do this. We have been saying BML. Can we say Black Lives Matter? Can we all say it together?
I agree.
Because we need to say it. If people need to hear it. It's not just a concept. We are saying that our lives matter just like yours. And to me, it's especially important because I have a very young daughter, and unfortunately, she is aware of these things. So please, let's just say it together. Black Lives Matter. Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.